Yes, it's TGIF, and you're welcome to this morning's edition of AM120. It's the 27th of March 2026. I am Oluwafumbi Bello. Yes, it's the newspaper review segment, and of course, we take you through the dailies first before our interview segment. And this morning, I will be starting with the Nigerian Tribune. On the front page is a story on page 8, says IGP submits state police framework to Senate. 75-page document focuses on operational, legal, administrative implications. Yes, that's all we have been waiting for. Ali, 2 others to be installed as Obas in Ibadan land, April 3, and that story is on page 2. Court orders arrest of Taminu Turaki, a PDP factional chairman. That story is on page 3. Efforts ongoing to put PDP on the ballot in 2027. And that's according to Saraki. That story is on page 4. Anyoma State creation receiving attention, and that's according to the President of the Senate, Akpabio. That story is on page 2. Court discharges Stella Odua of 2.5 billion naira fraud, and that story is on page 19. APC sets for convention as 8,453 delegates converge on Abuja today. Offices are zoned based on federal character principles, and that's coming from Masari. Federal government declares today work-free at Federal Secretariat, and that story is on page 5. Street urchins attack Lagos task force, set railway line ablaze, and that story is on page 8. That's all we have on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, taking some of the inside stories, starting with page 2. Falae's autobiography mirrors Nigeria's enduring journey, and that's according to Mimiko. ITUC Africa to Interior Minister scrap visa biometric fees for Africans. Insecurity may affect credibility of 2027 polls, and that's coming from INEC. OPL 245, our position is grounded in public records, not politics, and that's coming from Atiku. Court orders arrest of PDP factional chairman Taminu Turaki. All stories on page 3. Moving on to page 4. 2027, PDP must be on ballots. That's coming from Saraki, says he's working to resolve party crises. 2027, or your APC denies picking Gilbert candidate, urges public to ignore reports. Kwara PDP not aligned to any faction, and that's coming from the chairman. Fashui resigns from PDP over lingering crises. Ogun 2027, group transitions to Yayi Progressives movement. All stories on page 4 and on page. Wike-led PDP conduct Southwest Zonal Congress. Gawuna 2023 APC governorship candidate in Kano may join ADC. Federal government targets of 7% GDP growth, 6 more reforms to reduce inflation interest rates. CBN holds 2026 monetary policy forum, and that's on page 6, talking of business and economy. Sanwo-Olu inaugurates first commercial building at Lagos Free Zone. Federal government highlights power sector reforms, says transformation yielding tangible results. Oyetola seeks deeper collaboration with EU to address emerging maritime threats. Ogunaike steps in as 23rd Ibadan Chamber of Commerce president, charges Oyo government on resuscitation of moribund industries. Equities extend rally as NGX hits 129 despite weak breath. All stories on page 7. IGP submits state police framework to Senate. 75-page document focuses on operational, legal, administrative implications. Nigeria losing big on war against corruption, and that's coming from IFFS. And That's according to NLC. Street urchins set railway line filling station on fire to escape from task force. All stories on page 8. Moving on to page 24. National Museum of Unity Ibadan celebrates International Women's Day 2026 in style. Women's generosity, key to building stronger communities, according to Dr. Adeyeye. Alaki of Egbaland for Nanta at 50 set for AGM. Our Easter extravaganza is a time for family fun, and that's coming from Mutanda. Sultan Toban Sordana's great-grandson as Maganji Garin Sokoto. Federal government commends Adamawa monarchs for promoting peace, unity. 2027 Cuba group back zoning to Kwara North urges Speaker to join the race. And that story is on page 25. 708 Nigerians repatriated from Niger. Sokoto government to fund annual Ramadan tafsir ends appeal fundraising. Court ruling, Yusuf swears in new Kumbotso local government chairman. Kano records 913 TB cases, expands free treatment centers. NUJ, PRP condemn alleged police assault on journalist in Bauchi. And that story is on page 26. Structural imbalance, governance failure, bane of Nigeria's development. And that's coming from Okurumu. Uriwa accuses Abakiari's team of falsehood against NDLEA. Unsafe water crisis hits rural Nigeria with 70% of Oyo households at risk. And that's coming from an expert. Makinde approves reconstitution of third Oyo Youth Parliament. All stories on page 27. Moving on to sports stories on the back page, we have Nigeria League Service. Old foes clash in Ibadan. Brothers at war in Aba. NNL to honor Plateau, Benue State's governors. Doma FC to return to top flight. Friendly, we can compete with Nigeria, and that's coming from Iran defender. Cricket, Nigeria seal dramatic super over win against South Africa. And on the back page, we have real offer difficult to reject. And that's coming from Rodri. Nigeria women's wheelchair basketball to make debut at 2026 Commonwealth Games. And that's all on the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Over to you, Victor.
Well, I've got a number of newspaper front pages right here with me. I'll start with a bunch where we have this one. UK raises visa citizenship fees for Nigerians and others. You find more of that right there on page 8. Well, CBN blacklists top loan defaulters. You find more of that story on page 17. On page 3, 2027 gubernatorial polls inside Kwara APC's consensus dilemma. All right, we have this one as well. 32 governors, 8,450 delegates arrive Abuja for APC convention. And there's more of the story on page 2, but the writer says government orders remote work amid gridlock fears. Convention opens as party rebuffs lawsuit claims. Airlines, hotels cash in. On page 7, Ali to be crowned Ibadan Oba despite governorship bid. On page 17, blackouts cost Nigeria 40 trillion naira yearly. That's coming from a report. And there's this one protest erupt as Venezuelan president appears in New York court again. Now let's go over to the Vanguard newspaper where we have the headlines in here. 2027 Makinde Wike camps move to save PDP. And there's Turaki saying those working against reconciliation identified and flushed out. Makinde Bala stakeholders gave us mandates to reconcile. That's coming from an NWC source. 2027 still, all 6 geopolitical zones rally behind Tinubu as APC holds congresses on page 5. And we have this one on page 9. Courts nullifies CBN's takeover of Union Bank, says regulator acted beyond powers. And Ogun 2027, 11 men, 4 women battle to succeed Abiodun. You find more of that on page 11. On page 20, how U.S.-Iran war drives crude oil prices up 85% to $130 per barrel. And on page 9, the sad story, terrorist ambush troops kill 9 soldiers and policemen in KB. On page 8, we have Middle East crisis. U.S.-Iran offer counter proposals to achieve ceasefire. And on page 6, anti-immigrant protests. South Africans target Nigerians, others, and call for stricter border control. On to the Nation newspaper, where we have the front page really with stories. State Police, IG proposes mode of operation, safeguards and outlook. The Senate gets a framework from Ogunshakin panel. And we have on page 6, Tinubu Ayedatiwa Mimiko others honor Falai's memoirs presentation. All right, we have this one. Why women deputies should be considered for governor, and court orders Turaki's arrest. Of that on the front page, federal government moves to secure 692 billion naira World Bank loan for education, healthcare in states. We have this one. UK rolls out new fees for new visas, residency and citizenship. You find more of that on page 5. APC ready for conventions, says Idris, as ward suspends Dagogo, same page 5. And of course, it's on that same page that we have a story about CBN target single-digit inflation and stable exchange rate. All right, the last paper we'll be looking at the front page is The Guardian, and we've gotten the story, Nigeria's heat crisis, power failure, focus, trigger public health and financial crisis. It's big stories on pages 4 and 5. And we have NLC, CSOs warn Nigeria losing fight against corruption on page 7. Only 249 out of 774 local council areas have pipe-borne water. There is more of that on page 30. IGP submits State Police framework on page 2. APC defense zoning consensus. Tinubu's choice ahead of convention on page 6. And INEC warns of electoral violence, foreign influence ahead of 2027 polls on the same page 6. All right, we have more stories, and that's Turaki appeals a bench warrant as PDP faction forecloses support for Tinubu's re-election. And you find more of that on page 3. On the same page 3, we have these two stories. Federal government reduces power sector liabilities as NEMCO claims 2.16 trillion naira debt. And of course, we have the story. CBN slashes ways and means to 2.84 trillion naira from 26.9 trillion naira in 2023. And that's as much as we can take on the newspaper review segment. All right, we go on for the weather report now. I'll be back for more.
Breaking news. The home is under attack, but not for long, because Hypo is here. Dirty floors and surfaces.
Not on our watch.
Every day with Hypo. Dirty and stains, no do shakara. We got the remedy, original palasa. Hypo, go Hypo.
Germs always find a way back.
No green. Protect every day with Hypo.
Hypo, go Hypo.
us. Yes, this morning we will be talking about CBN's banks recapitalization and matters arising. And of course, to do justice to this particular topic this morning, we have Mr. Oludari Adewale, a chartered accountant, retired banker, and a legal practitioner. Good morning, sir. It's good to have you.
Good morning.
Looking at the recapitalization banks CBN gave to banks across Nigeria, and of course the requirement, and as of 3-4 days ago, 34 banks have met the requirement. Let's start from the basics. What exactly is this recapitalization we've been hearing about? Why recapitalization to banks?
Thank you so much, the presenter. Banks have share capital, and share capital is meant to do business. The money is supposed to be contributed by the owners of such banks, so that when the money is put together, it forms the chunk of what the bank uses to do business. Part of the business banks do is to fund the lending requirements, of their customers, and to do other projects, capital and other projects that the banks may want to do. So, when ideally there is a certain minimum that the banks should have as share capital in order to start to do business. But over time, it has been discovered that this capital is being eroded. It's being eroded by inflation, by a lot of other factors, so that the value of the share capital is no longer up to what was put there in the first instance. So now that the federal government is thinking of achieving a $1 trillion target, that target was set since 2 years ago. Since that's its main target, the choice it has is to now increase or improve on the capital level of each bank. That is, they have to improve on their capitalization. So which means they have to recapitalize. The banks now have to recapitalize by adding to the capital base that they already have before the current dispensation.
All right. So you just mentioned the deadline. It took 2 years for that. It is the biggest banking policy that we've seen in a couple of decades now in Nigeria, in the banking industry. Was that timeline enough for all the banks to be compliant? Noting that earlier this year, it was just about 20 banks who were compliant at some point, but now we have about 30. I think by my last count, I was trying to check through, I saw about 30. Yeah. Do you think that timeline was good enough, strong enough for those banks to meet up?
Thank you so much. I believe 2 years is enough for any serious bank that is meant, that wants to really recapitalize. 2 years is enough. Since 2024, the government had rolled out the policy, and they didn't relent. They didn't relent between then and now in talking to the public, in mass mobilization of people, to ensure that people are really carried along. The customers, the bank customers, the banks themselves, and other stakeholders. So I believe 2 years should be okay, should be enough. And we can see that in the way that the banks are even complying. It was 20 banks before. Now you said, and I believe too, that it has increased to 30. That's an improvement.
All right, we'll go on this break. And when we come back, I would like us to look at the current economic situation and how it's going to affect many of those banks in view of these policies that we have now. But let's keep it locked on right here.
Breaking news. The home is under attack, but not for long, because Hypo is here. Dirty floors and surfaces.
Not on our watch.
Dirty and stains no fit do us shakara. We got the remedy, original palasa. Hypo, go hypo.
Germs always find a way back.
No green. Protect every day with Hypo.
All right. We're having a conversation about the CBN's banks recapitalization matters arising, what has been dubbed one of the biggest moves in the banking industry. And yes, I was looking at the current economic situation that we have globally, and the difficulties, with businesses getting stuff done. And there's no way you remove businesses from the banking industry and how they roll. Don't you think this could have affected, because there's been some kind of instability in recent months?
Well, thank you. I don't believe this can negatively affect the system generally. I don't believe so, because this is an arrangement that has been in place since 2 years, and the arrangement is not limited to Nigerian environment only. You have foreigners investing in the Nigerian banks. You have local people investing too. So it's an open space where everybody can come, and people have been responding.
But looking at this policy now, what is it trying to solve, or what's the aim of this policy to solve the current Nigerian economy crisis?
Well, thank you. The aims of this recapitalization thing, there are many. If I may tell you, when it started with categorizing the banks into 500 billion, a bank that should look for 500 billion, which will be the status of international banks. A bank that should look for 200 billion minimum, which will be in the nature of a national bank. A bank that should look for banks, the third category are banks that should have a minimum of 50 billion, which would be able to run merchant or regional banking system. Or you look for these non-interest banks, that is all these religious non-interest banks, like Jais, I'm sorry, like some banks that are not charging interest, they have their own category too. Now the aims of this categorization, this recapitalization, there are so many. One, to the customers. But if you say what are the aims, you are asking questions about what will the customers benefit from this idea? What will banks benefit from this idea? And what will other stakeholders benefit? The customers, there will be improved confidence. When your bank was assuming your bank was on the capital level of 100 billion before, and now it is on 500, it means that bank can do more business, can finance more of your transactions than it used to do before. So you have more confidence in such a system, in such a bank. You can do more business, you can come there and transact more. So there is more confidence in the customers who interact with these banks. Okay. They have the confidence that, look, if I come to you any day, anytime, I have to get what I want. I don't need to go to all these other categories of banks in order to look for money. Then there is economic growth too. The economy will definitely grow. By the time you inject so much fund into the system, and the injection is not a localized one only, like I said earlier. People bring money from abroad to inject into the system too, and we feel it. So there are many other advantages or many benefits.
You've talked about the customer part now, but what about the banks itself?
Well, the banks itself, the aim or the objective of this recapitalization thing is that it helps the banks to synergize. That is, when banks come together, because in the course of this recapitalization, you may have merger, you may have acquisitions, you may have a lot of business models that need to be brought into play. Banks will now have to synergize. They have to come together. What is your area of strength? What is my own area of strength? Let us put all these things together and then be able to do better. And also, you know, banks, the CBN too is also always supporting the banks to ensure that they do well along this line. So there are a lot of advantages that banks benefit from this. You know, you have a stronger capital base, you have improved financial stability, and all of that, which tend to be good for the economy.
All right. And now, like you've mentioned, what I captured is that you believe that we would have bigger, stronger banks.
We have what?
Bigger and stronger banks.
Yes.
That will be able to disburse more loans.
Yes.
And ensure more stability and more growth.
Exactly.
So, no, we're looking at the fact that there is also the mention of the economic ambitions of the country, the 1 trillion economy. Is this going to align properly with it? That's one side of it. Are there some banks that are more youth-friendly that will fall off the way? And what does this mean, you know, when you juxtapose with the cashless policy that we have been drumming?
Well, banks, thank you so much. Banks that are youth-friendly that you mentioned, there's no way these banks you have in mind, there's no way they will not fall into one of these 5 categories. If it doesn't fall into the 500 billion recapitalization, it will fall into 200 billion. If it doesn't fall there, it will fall under 50 billion. If it's not there, it will fall under 20. There is this interest-free, non-interest banks whose capital base have been brought up to 20 billion. Those are the national ones, the national banks. Those ones are still categorized into 2 again. The non-interest banks, they are categorized into 2. National banks and regional banks. So the minimum capital base that anybody can think of is 10 billion. And there is no bank that will not make the 10 billion minimum. So whether it's a youth-friendly bank or any other kind of interest or any other category of people that you have in mind, it will always find its level.
Will it work with the, you know, we've seen the reaction to the cashless policy from under the previous CBN governor. We're still on the fire now. There's been that recurring theme of Nigeria having more of its currency outside the banks than in the banks. I mean, how do we now marry this with this new policy that they're trying to get into? Because for it to be achieved, there's no way we would not talk about all the monies that we find in the Ghana Must Go bags, you know, has been moved around, sprayed at event. How do we get to achieve this with all of that in question?
Thank you so much. Well, I want to see this as an opportunity to bring in the funds that are outside. Yes, I agree with you. We still have a lot of money outside the banking system that are flowing all over the place. But then, with this policy, some of these funds are bound to come in. Because when you raise the share capital of a bank that was on say, 50 or 100 billion before, you now say it should move to 500 billion. It must raise this 500 from somewhere. If it doesn't raise it locally, it has to raise it from abroad. And even locally too, there are many ways through which it will raise the fund. If it doesn't raise it from rights issue, it will raise it from initial public, it will raise it from IPO. There are various sources, various means. That's what I'm saying. There are various means by which a bank can raise funds. So through all these various means, some of these monies that are outside will fall in.
Let's look at businesses now, SMEs and business owners. There's this concern that with this recapitalization, the policy, it's going to affect getting monies from the banks? Does it affect it? Talking of loans now, does it affect SMEs getting loans, business owners getting loans from the bank, especially when the bank is trying to reach or get to that amount that they've been given? Will it affect their loan requirements?
Thank you so much. Like I said earlier, recapitalization, one of the aims of recapitalization is to strengthen the banks such that they will be able to finance more of the businesses of their customers. So the customers will now be in a position to get more loans. SME and these other friendly loans that can revitalize the system, the economy. So the banks will definitely have more opportunity. The customers, they will have more opportunities to take more loans, to have more loans. The ones that they didn't have before, they will have the opportunity, and the economy will also.
But in terms of charges now.
Well,
yes, there are concerns about that also. Will I be charged more? The interest rate, is it going to go higher than what we have currently? You know, those are questions that have been asked. And are there major concerns that people should be worried about?
Thank you so much. Charges. Well, when we get to the bridge, we see how we can cross it. But given
I think we're already on that bridge, and people need to be aware. People need to be prepared.
You are right.
You know, for what is coming.
Well, what I wanted to say was that when you know, now we are talking of improved capital base of the various banks. I do not expect banks to now slam customers with unnecessary charges, because you now have more capital to do with. You have more money to do business, and even if it is by way of competition, the customers are supposed to be in a better position, because they have more banks to deal with now with higher capital base. If you don't do my business, you don't do it the way I want it, I can go to another bank. So in that situation, I think at the end of the day, it will pay the customers, even the banks, not to charge much, to just ensure that they charge what to make them to make their profit, and want to also make the customer to make his own margin as well. So I don't see a situation where banks will start to charge exorbitantly. I don't see that.
When you were speaking about processes the other time, you mentioned the initial public offerings, that's IPOs. You mentioned the rights issues. No mention of mergers. I know back then, when we had something similar to this policy, banks had to merge, to come as one. And we're looking at the possibility of that happening again. How does this bode? And what can be done about it, so people would understand better?
Thank you so much. You see, I had mentioned mergers, acquisition when I started my contribution at the initial stage. These are part of the business models that are likely to come up in the course of this recapitalization. You know, where you have some banks that are unable to meet up with the minimum capital requirements, they are bound to come together. And one beautiful thing that is there is that the CBN has always promised us. The CBN is always telling everybody, including the customers, that look, your money is safe. Your money is safe, and which is the most important assurance that we need. Even when there is merger, when there is all these conglomerations, when you have mergers, you have other forms of business models, your money is still safe. But because you cannot run away from mergers, or neither can you run away from acquisition. You know, you have some banks who don't have the strength that is dictated, that is required of the system. They cannot face out. They have to come together, and they're already doing it. I don't want to mention banks' names, but I know of some of these banks that are not able to meet up with the requirement, but they are already coming together. They are talking together, they are forming alliances, they are forming, they are merging, and some are even preparing to get acquired by other bigger ones.
And you would agree with me that when we talk of mergers in terms of, or when banks merge, it falls back to the customers, the clients, the people. Now, when we now start talking about merging, banks who cannot meet this requirement coming together, maybe 2-3 banks coming together, where does this leave the customers? Should there be panic? What should they do, especially when they have, their monies in a particular bank that is merging with another bank?
Thank you so much. We have heard this before.
Before you answer that question, we have a commercial break. We'll be right back. Please stay with us.
All right, everyone, no put your ears, make we talk. Time don't reach to rearrange his house to give una small wisdom. Sounds mighty fresh now, but you know, I beg no be so. Before una go talk, say our smell no reach. Make una think I'm twice so. Ever heard of Colgate, the #1 oral care brand in the world?
Colgate Maximum Cavity Protection unlocks 24 hours cavity defense. The formula boost with calcium for lifelong smiles.
Mom, it's your time to brush. No more for my cover mouth. Because we Colgate, that's who do ya got with your smile.
Colgate for 24 hours maximum cavity protection.
Thank you very much for staying with us. We're still talking about CBN's banks recapitalization and, of course, matters arising from that particular policy. Before we went on that break, we're talking about banks who could not or who might not be able to meet up with the requirements merging with other bigger banks. Where does that leave the people, the customers, and their monies in those banks?
Thank you so much, the presenter.
Should they panic? Should they be?
They shouldn't panic. That's the summary of my presentation. They should not, because the central bank is always assuring us. The NDIC is there. That's the work of the NDIC, Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation. They have done it before, and they continue to do it. And they have always guided the banks. They have always pronounced policies that will make the money to be saved, so that people can continue to have increased confidence in the economy. So there's no reason to panic. Nobody has any reason to panic. Even when there is merger, when there is acquisition, when there is any form of model, business model that comes up, everybody is safe. Your money is safe. That is a very strong assurance that we have always had.
But should they have any expectations when their banks or bank is being merged? Should there be expectations? Should they be looking forward to any surprises?
Yeah, thank you. The surprises, if there's any surprises, will be pleasant, because they will now have opportunity to access more funds than before. They now have opportunity to do more projects than before. They now have opportunity to relate more with their banks. Because there will be stable economy, there will be improved system in the country generally. Everything will improve financially. So people have every cause to be expectant.
I want us to look a bit away from what we are talking about, not too far from it, job security. Now, when we have banks merging, some people will definitely lose their job. Where does that leave, those people? Well, are we not going to say this policy is also not completely in favor of the people, of the masses? Should we look at it in that direction?
Thank you so much. The issue of job security, if you look at the trend as it is going now, starting from when the policy started in 2024, March, up till now, you will see that more banks have complied than the ones that have not. More banks have complied. We are talking of 30 or thereabouts banks. And we have not heard of any job loss so far. We have not heard of any merger or acquisition so far. It's been shoring up their capital base. So if we are going to have that, probably towards the tail end, which is the next few days.
Yes.
Which is the next few days.
Of course, we will
and,
see. We will be talking about this when we actually get to the deadline.
Yeah,
that's banks do not meet the requirements.
That's what I'm saying. That even between now and the deadline, we are already seeing signs of those that will merge and those that will be acquired within the next 1 week, 2 weeks. And that percentage is so small compared to the number of banks that are involved. That's number one. You are talking of job loss. That's number one. So with that, there won't be serious job loss issue. There won't be serious job loss issue.
Are you sure? Now, we're looking at a situation, like I mentioned, it's almost a replica of what happened, I think, was it 2005? 2004, 2005, thereabouts, where we had something similar. Yeah. The number of banks reduced from almost 90 to about 20-something. I don't have the exact figures in my head.
Less than 30.
Yes, but I know that at this point, there will be some banks who will be forced into thinking of a merger. There will be some that would not be able to fulfill requirements. The number, we've added some more added to that number that we had back then. But the number, won't it count as some losses, some kind of losses to the Nigerian public? What other losses are we actually looking at? Because for everything that has an advantage and benefit,
it must have disadvantage.
It must have. So what are the ones, so that we'll be able to, hold strong and brace up for the impact?
Well, thank you. The disadvantages that normally go along with merger, with acquisition, they already been taken care of by NDIC and Central Bank of Nigeria. So that's why I'm not envisaging any serious negative fallout of all these measures. The issue of people getting aware, because you need to carry people along. That is being done regularly to let people know that, look, as from so time to so time, the bank ABC will now be known as bank, will now merge with bank BCD, and the name will now be Kiniko. That information is already is going viral, and so people are already learning. They are already getting involved, getting aware. So, and the issue of job loss is another disadvantage that we talk. And I think I personally don't see any serious issue here, because the CBN is up to the task. The NDIC, they are all working to ensure that there is nothing like that.
Not even that of share issuance and all that.
Is that what?
Not even that of the likes of the share issuances and all of that. Like too many of that happening.
Share issuance?
Like when the whole thing gets diluted. That's what I was looking for.
Okay.
Too much of banks trying to get the processes in getting it now. Don't you think there will be too much proliferation of all the rights that they will be trying to use? The rights issuance, the shares, and everything.
You know that you're always having one challenge or the other in such processes. You always have one challenge or the other, but they are not so serious that it will affect.
They're not serious
They are
enough.
They are internal routine issues.
Okay.
So they are normal routine issues that come up when you are recapitalizing, and you want to raise your funds, maybe through rights issue, like I said earlier, or through other means, through IPO or private placements, or through some other sources. You already have some normal routine issues which can always be overcome. Those ones don't really come to the front burner. So they are not serious matters.
I want us to talk about the economy, this policy on the economy. It was initially brought up in 2024, March 2024, and I remember Nigerians we had not entirely lived in the reality of subsidy removal, the economy, and how the hardship was really much on Nigerians. You know, the complaints were so much. Do you think it was a good time, the old recapitalization policy, do you think it's a good policy, especially looking at the economy of Nigeria currently? We see what is happening again right now, the issue of, fuel hike, price in fuel hike, and every other thing. You know, the purchasing power of Nigerians, we saw the floating of the naira, inflation, and every other thing, that is attributed to a fluctuating economy. Do you think it's good for our economy currently in Nigeria?
Thank you so much. Well, I personally believe that there can't be any other time to implement this policy other than now. We are saying we want to improve the balance sheets of the banks generally, so that it will in turn affect the business, the volume of business they can do. The only way by which you can do that is to shore up their capital base, to improve on their capitalization, so that they can have opportunity to give out more money. So, and when they can give out more money, the economy will bounce back. Every other thing will be doing well. The issue of fuel is another thing entirely.
Yes, I'm talking about the economy now. We are looking at it contributes to the economy, the state of the economy.
Yes.
There are other factors that also contribute, because we are
Exactly.
still coming back to the economy. And when we talk about money, we cannot talk about the economic situation of the state, of the nation.
You can't leave
from
money
it.
out
Exactly.
of it.
So we also look at other factors that contribute to a dwindling economy that we currently have in Nigeria.
But I think this policy is one of those policies that can help the economy to bounce back. It's one of those policies, because we are saying our banks are not doing much, they are not doing well, they are not doing enough, rather, and we want them to do more. And so part of what we can use, part of what can help them to do more is to shore up their capital, to be able to give out loans. A bank that could give out 1 million before is now boasting, is now capable of giving out 5, 10, 15, 20 million. That's an improvement, and the rate will turn around to be better for the economy.
All right. So now, in a nutshell, everything I've discussed here today, from your own point of view, is more of strengthening the banks.
More of
Is it more of strengthening the banks?
strengthening the banks is one of them. It's a major aim of this recapitalization project.
Please, sir, because of the public, because there's no way people would not be a bit scared about their monies at this point in time. How will we allay their fears? What measures do you think the CBN and the banks are supposed to take to ensure that people are not scared? Because in the face of this, some people will start taking away more of that money that is in the bank and start keeping it at home or somewhere else. What do you think we should be doing? What should we be looking at as measures from the CBN or from the banks to ensure that people's fears are allayed?
Thank you so much. Well, I've said it earlier. People have no cause for alarm. There's no cause for alarm. We have done it before. Like you said, 2024, 25, 26 or thereabout. There was this kind of policy too.
Yeah, 2004, 2005.
2004, 2005, 2006 or thereabouts. There was this kind of policy as well, which gave Nigeria a lot of experience, and the experience we are building on it now, by virtue of this policy. So there is no need to be panicking or to be running around for anything. the systems have been there. The shocks that are supposed to be there have been taken care of by the CBN and the NDIC. And they are always telling us, which is true, always telling us that, look, there's no reason to be afraid of either the government or banks' policies.
Let's look at the role investors have to play in this policy, because of course we know that banks cannot reach that threshold just by the economy or with the economy in Nigeria currently. So so far do you think investors have been forthcoming in terms of banks meeting these requirements? And this will also still bring us back to the current economy. We've seen in past few months, past few years now, that we've seen a lot of industries, a lot of companies folding up because of the current state of the nation, economy of the nation. Now, how do you think, what's their response so far for banks to meet these requirements?
Yeah, thank you so much. You see, foreign investment has been awesome along this line. Foreign investors have been coming, and with what we read and what we see, not less than close to 30% of these funds have been brought in by foreigners, which is good. And you can see the efforts of Mr. President of recent, moving from one continent to the other, trying to source for investments. And these things are paying. They are paying. So foreigners are also saying they see the future of this country, that the future is bright, it's great, and foreigners they are trying, and money is coming in through them, and I foresee more coming in the next few days, especially.
All right. As we wrap up on this particular segment this morning, we know there might be banks, like we said earlier, who might not meet up with the requirements. What should we be expecting? What should we be looking forward to, especially as Nigerians in the coming days? Should we be expecting any surprises, from the CBN? Just give us, let's just know.
Thank you so much. If at the end of the day, you have one or two banks that are not able to meet up, well, part of these regulatory actions, we call them regulatory actions, are that there might be license revocation. That's one of the steps that the CBN can take, can revoke the license or licenses of such banks. And there may also be downgrades. They may have to downgrade some from their the existing level down to a much lower level. But although these two measures are not likely, but let us wait and see who will be able to make it at the end of the day, and who will not eventually make it. But if there is anyone that will not be able to make it, maybe very, 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 very few, one or two.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Oludare Adewale. He's a chartered accountant, retired banker, and legal practitioner who's been talking to us about CBN's bank recapitalization and, of course, the processes and all we need to know about the policies that have been put in place by CBN. And the deadline is March 31st this year. It's been in place for about 2 years now. Deadline.
That's the next 4 or 5 days.
Days from now, yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Adewale. We appreciate you coming to enlighten us on this particular issue. We'll be right back after this time out. Please stay with us.
All right, thank you very much for sticking around with us. We are still in the conversation around CBN's banks recapitalization. Yes, we are looking at the matters arising from that. And we have our second guest right on seat as we promised. And together, we're going to be analyzing this because he's a public affairs analyst and his name is Mr. Bright Richard. You're welcome this morning.
Yeah, good morning to you. Good morning, Nigerians.
Well, this is not the first time we would have something like this.
Yes.
Circa 2004, 2005, or 2006, we had something similar to this. Now, this is dubbed the biggest, move in the banking industry in about 2 decades. What were your first thoughts when you saw this?
Yeah, first of all, I saw it as something that is long overdue. Because as at 2004, when the first move came, it was from, I can't get the exact figure, but it was moved to 25 billion. And now we are looking at 500 billion. They have 3 categories. For the international banks, banks that has their branches outside the shores of Nigeria is 500 billion. Then the national banks is 200 billion. Then the regional bank is about 50 billion. And if you look at from...
we have the non-interest banks also.
Yeah, the non-interest bank is a new sector that is being introduced into the Nigeria banking scheme, especially the Islamic bank. And we just have a few of them. And is a good one if you look at it from that angle. But if you look at the aim of the CBN in trying to do this, I want to see us to put it in a very local way that we can actually relate with it. Because the man selling paper on the street will like, what's my concern if banks are recapitalizing? I could remember before that 2004 move, there was a bank then, Savannah Bank and the likes, they had crisis. A lot of banks had to fold up. And if you do a comparison, before that move and after that move, how the banking system operates. Sometimes when you go to the bank, you always have these issues, this excuse, no network. You can spend like 3-4 hours in a bank trying to withdraw or trying to access your cash. And after that move, there was some form of adjustment. So now let me relate that with the retail banking scheme. The popular one that we can actually relate with is that of the POS. If you look at the guy sitting under the umbrella or the lady sitting under the umbrella, you may approach her that I want to withdraw 500,000. And the next thing she would tell you is that I don't have cash. She don't have cash because her capital is not up to what you are demanding. That does not mean you're not a customer. Now, related with the commercial bank, somebody can walk up to a bank. In fact, there was a day I was in one of the bank, and the man in front of me was talking to the cashier that can he get like 200 million. I had to look at him and say, in this economy, you're collecting 200 million. And I had to pause and observe the scenario. I was trying to look at the bank's reaction, And they said, sir, you have to put up, is it from your corporate account? He said, yes. You may have to put up a letter your directors need to sign. They were giving all forms of excuse. The bank is at Iwo Road. A lot of excuse. And at the end of the day, the excuse was so frustrating, and the man said, okay, no problem. I'll take my leave. And the moment the man left, the manager had to breathe a sign of relief. Thank God. I was just like, why that expression? And from their conversation, I was just standing listening to what they were saying. They don't have the money to pay him. The demand is more. So when you now bring it down to recapitalization, it's the operational capital the banks need to function. You take 20 million naira to deposit in the bank. Before this move, 2024, what bank does is they use your money to transact. And that is why it's easy for you to deposit. And it's difficult for you to withdraw. Because by the time you drop your money, you go to the branch, you deposit 20,000, you deposit 1 million. The next man who comes to withdraw, they credit you in figure. But the next man who comes to withdraw, they use your money to pay him. So that's how it circulates. So most times, banks rely more on depositors' money. And that is why they come up with a lot of narrative. Okay, save money with us for 3 months, winner promo, you get minimum balance. And if you observe, end of the month, the last working day of the month, try to withdraw from the bank. It's always difficult. Why? Because those marketers and account officers, there's what they call balance reports. So what they've brought him at the end of the month. So they look at the balances of all their customers. They use it in rating them. So they try every possible means. In fact, there was a time I was privileged to be sitting in a mechanic shop waiting for someone, and beside me is the regional manager of a bank. And he was complaining about there was a particular year during the Ramadan that they were looking for the moon, and the holiday was extended for 3 days. And the man was like telling the branches under him that, please, whatever you need to do, we know after this holiday, there's going to be a massive withdrawal. And the bank does not have the capacity for that kind of cash out. So whatever they can do to retain as much funds for them. So it was like an information. So all these are what the CBN have seen. How do we stabilize this? How do we control it? Because the banks are not making effort in upgrading their capital base because they rely more on people's deposit. So the CBN came up with this policy. Okay, fine. For international bank, upgrade your capital base to 500 billion. Then for regional banks, national banks, 200 billion. So that outside depositors' money, you have your own money to transact. So that was one of the moves. That's one. Then the second move is this administration is targeting $1 trillion. Was it $1 trillion or $1 trillion economy? And how would they achieve that? If all the 35 banks are able to run a capital base, because their capital would be domiciled with the CBN, if they are to drop that 500 billion with the CBN, because it's in and out, you drop, you withdraw, you deposit, you withdraw. That's why you see this bullion van moving around. They offload to the CBN, they withdraw from the CBN. So if they have that money domiciled with the CBN, then the economy has a treasure base of 1 trillion. Not just the banks alone, but all the sectors put together. So with that, you can actually transact. Take, for instance, I run a mobile bank, whether POS or whatever. Everybody here, my customer, you are giving me 1,000. He is giving me 1 million. He is giving me 100,000. Put them together. They are not my money. They are your money. But put them together, it becomes 1,101,000. That is with me. So I can use that money to do 1 or 2 transactions. When you want to withdraw your money, I quickly make it available for you to have it. But the money is based with me. So that's what they mean by the $1 trillion economy. So the CBN has a float of that money in its coffer. So whatever foreign transaction somebody is importing from the US and it needs forex of a certain amount, the CBN can make that funds available because the capital base the economy has that stake to be able to run that transaction with them. So that's how it's going to affect the economy at large. So there are lots in it.
Okay, I like the way you've broken it down. But then let's look at this part. You said it's been long overdue. But do you think that the banks, now we have, reports that there are about 30 of those banks who have been able to meet the target. We'll still have a couple of days before 31st anyways. But do you think that timeline is enough, 2 years?
Yeah, it's enough.
It is?
It's enough because if you observe, as at the time CBN made the announcement, what all the banks did, they released shares and they called for investors to buy shares. In fact, I was in 2 banks at Iwo Road, and one of the, she's not my account officer, but most times when you want to withdraw, you have some preferred persons you go to, they attend to you on time. She was like, have I bought their shares? I said, no, I've not bought your shares. He said, why can't you try it? It's as if they give them mandate that all of you must sell shares because they must meet up.
Don't you think that's a problem? The market's dilution, the share issuance?
No, where I'm driving at is, as at that time, they were wooing me to buy their shares at 12 naira per shares. And before the closure of that particular sales, the shares have risen to 18 naira. So I was like, if I had bought it when it was 12 naira, I would have made some dividend. So that was what most of the banks did then, as much as possible. A lot of them, I don't want to mention their names, they released shares and people were investing. And if you look critically too, that also has impacted on the Nigeria Stock Exchange. For those who have been following up on the stock market, you discover that since this administration came on board, the stock have been doing well because a lot of investment are going on there, because the stock market is like a place where I run a PLC and I need to upgrade my capital base. I need more capital flows into my business. I may not want to borrow. So what I need to do, just roll out stocks. So investors who believe in my business and believe that the business is going to strive, they put in their money into, so it's more or less like, it's another form of lending. So I give you money in stocks. I can buy 1 unit, I can buy 10,000 units, I can buy 1,000 units. It's my money I'm giving to you and you trade with it. So at the end of the fiscal year, you release dividends. And that's why if you look at the cement sector, the food and beverage sectors, at the end of their fiscal year, it's okay, this stock, the dividend being released to shareholders at the end of that period. So that's how the banks were actually, many of them were actually able to raise as much as they can because people believe in them. A lot of banks, like the first 5 banks, when they rolled out their stock, it's not up to a year, many of them were able to meet up with their targets. But the others are still struggling. Then the international market too, one of the challenges, and that's why I said it's long overdue. When it was 25 billion, what was the exchange rate then? About 100 naira to $1. Now, it's still 25 billion before this new policy. And what was the exchange rate? Over 1,000 naira to $1. So those banks find it difficult coping with the international markets. That's one. Then number 2, there's another bank, I think a Lemon Green, you may know the bank that folded up some few years ago because of depositors. So they find it difficult paying depositors back their money when they went through the liquidation process. But with a 500 billion capital base, when it comes to liquidation, because a bank that is operating with people's capital, sometimes people do run fixed deposit with the bank. People run, savings, a lot of system, they give them their money. So by the time it comes to this area of liquidation, the fixed deposit guys, you will pay them their money and interest. Those who have stock shares with you, you will pay them. Then what about depositors? Somebody who left his money in his account and probably maybe have traveled abroad for the past 3 years and the money have been in the account. So when the bank is liquidating, how will he get his money back? So you need to get it. So this is where bank run into crisis when it comes to liquidation. But with a capital base, when it comes to liquidation, from your capital, the first thing they do, they look at your capital. From your capital, they pay off everybody. And when it's not enough, they go to your assets, what they can sell off to be able to pay up others.
So what's the outlook of Nigerian banks now after this recapitalization process?
Basically, if you look at the Nigeria financial sector, let me don't even go with the bank alone. The Nigeria fintechs and the bank, I think Nigeria, if the government can actually look very well, is another sector that is doing well. Although there is a lot of accusation of corporate fraud, let me use that word to classify it. We've heard stories of somebody leaving 50 million in his account, travel overseas, coming back to Nigeria, the 50 million is gone, no explanation. You and I must have experience. You leave 1,000 naira in your account, on coming back, you are seeing 344 naira. What happened to it? You cannot explain. You see a lot of unexplained deductions. Let me give you an instance. I know a particular bank, their customer base is about 16 million as at 2016, the last time I checked on that bank. And they were having 16 million customers. So I now asked myself a question. Remove 1 naira from the account every day. That's 16 million naira. And you hardly see Nigerians going to a bank to fight over 1 naira. And when you look at this issue of, dispense error, you go to the ATM machine to withdraw, you go to the POS to withdraw, and you are being debited, and you are not being credited, or the reversal is not being made. You see people fighting the POS operator. And when I see cases like that, I'll say the POS man is not your problem. It's the bank that is your problem. There's a particular bank that somebody made a worth over 40 billion naira. And that person happens to be the man in charge of dispense disputes. And when it comes to dispense dispute, it's a very funny systematic approach. You have 3 ends. You have the bank, your bank, you have the receiving bank, and you have the intermediary. That intermediary has to do with what they call the NIBSS, I think Nigerian Interbanking Settlement Scheme, that's NIBSS. That Nigerian Interbanking Settlement Scheme is the one who removes the money from your account and credits the other account. So where there is a network issue, by the time it's removing the money from your account, there's a network fluctuation. You see that the money has not left your account successfully. Because you leave your account, maybe at the headquarter level, waiting for NIBSS to take it and credit the other bank. That's why when, upon investigation, they will tell you that within 24 hours, the system ought to reverse itself. But when it fails to auto-reverse itself within that period, then there's a query, a request for a refund. So you request that money left your account and the receiver did not get it, or you tried to withdraw from ATM or POS, you were debited and you didn't get the value. So an investigation is being launched to know where that money is hanging. Now that is where most banks play on Nigeria's intelligence. And what I mean by that is it's a simple thing. The money left your account. Without you querying or asking, they ought to investigate and know about they are closing their account for the day. There's what they call overage. They will see it. It's on their machine. I've tried to use an ATM machine at Dugbe to make deposits. And I tried to do the deposit. The machine counted the money and I wasn't credited. Going back to the bank to make complaint, the woman said, okay, we're going to check the machine for excess. So they asked me what date was that. I told them the date. I said, okay, on that day, the overage, as the excess money they saw on their account, she gave me the figure. So that now lead me to the question so that means you people know about this. So why will you wait for your customers to be running after you? Because if the customer doesn't come, the money resides with them.
No, Mr. Richard, this brings to fore one of the questions that people had when this move was being made. We had the cash crunch a couple of years back. That was under the former CBN
Emefiele.
government, Emefiele. Now, you look at that situation where people had trouble talking about their money sitting in banks. So we gradually over time saw that people were used to having their cash with them, especially the market women, the market men. Everybody wanted to just keep the cash around them. And then some had to start creating storage rooms in their homes or think or pretend that some places were storage rooms anyways. We had the soccerways and all that. Now, we are trying to operate a cashless policy. But how do we get those monies back into the bank? Because we have known over time that there's that recurring saying, the cash, naira, is more outside the banks than inside the banking system.
First of all, let's deal with the politicians. They are the ones who store money.
But they're not the only ones.
They are the major ones.
But then during the cash crunch, when we wanted everybody to return the monies into the banks, we saw a lot of people who were not politicians also keeping the monies outside.
Why we say is a politician? Because number one, cashless system is the best because it deals with fraud. And you're able to track the movement.
No,
the
I'm trying to
flow of money.
juxtapose this to this recapitalization so that we have more money in the bank.
No, we have more money outside the bank than it's supposed to be.
I'm trying to
So that
juxtapose
we
so
will
that
have
we
more
now
money
have more
in the
money
bank
inside
than
the
what
banking
we've been
system
seeing.
than what we have been seeing.
Yeah, but the money in the bank is not the bank's money. It's still our money.
I understand.
Because the policy is now telling the bank, have your own money. Don't rely on people's money. But the question, if I get you right, what you are trying to say is that Nigerians doesn't trust the system.
Yeah.
Now, the recapitalization also happens to still fall with individuals. Go to the woman at Gbagi market or the one at Alashinoye market. Averagely, the highest they should have as their own capital won't be more than 10 million naira. And that's those who really have money. There are some people that their capital base is just 100,000. Some is just 10,000. The woman with 10,000 naira will not store money. Why will she store the 10,000? Because by the time she sells, she needs to buy another goods. And whoever she's buying from may not be based in the locality. So she will want to do transfer. So that money still comes back to the banking system. But those who keep money outside the banking system, let me explain a kind of fraud that the CBN have been trying to track. And a lot of POS operators fall under that. Because we've seen cases where they move money from account A to account B. It's traceable. When they check it, they'll see the movement. From B to C, it's traceable. You can pick A, you pick B, you pick C. Then they will not take it to D, who happens to be the POS operator. They won't go to the bank because there is CCTV. And they all comply with the EFCT. There's a policy, there's a money laundering act that they need to notify EFCT for some large amount of money. But the POS guy is not really binded by that. He's looking for money. So they just say that, do you have 1 million naira? Do you have 500,000? You say, yes, I have it. My charges is 10,000, whatever he or she wants to charge. So they now move the money to him because he doesn't have records of the customers who comes to him. So they cash out the money from him. So you break that chain of investigation. So it ends at the POS guy. And by the time you approach the POS guy, say it's a random customer, how do you hold him liable for that? So that's where the issues lie. So for the politicians, or those who are into, especially those who are into money laundering, fraud, and the likes, because money laundering, carrying a lot of people who they hold, it's because they are carrying large volume of money which is not supposed to be. Such money should go through the banking system. If you travel overseas and there's a maximum amount of raw cash that you should be holding or you should have in your possession, every other money should be in the system. And the reason why it should be in the system, imagine a man has 10 billion naira and is having the 10 billion naira in cash. Such person is starving the financial system of money. If that money is in the bank can use from that 10 billion naira and give out loan to somebody.
Exactly what I was.
We can use from that 10 billion naira and pay somebody who wants to withdraw. But But the money is with another man in his house doing nothing. And that is why the CBN is complaining that the money outside circulation. In fact, there was a time they said total money they've pumped out into circulation is about 100 and something trillion naira. And the total money in circulation, I don't know the exact figures now, but there was a time they would tell you 6 trillion, this trillion, and the money is not coming back. So it's making the system, it's frustrating the flow because money moves. I've told somebody that, look, the naira note you are holding is not your property. Because the person was trying to be funny, that give me my money. I said, it's not your money. It is a value that is yours. This note you are holding, and that's why the EFCT will come after you if you spray the money, if you step on the money. And I always tell those bike riders and the Mara guys that those of you squeezing those, you are abusing the naira. It's not your property. It belongs to the federal government. And that is why the CBN will tell you that they are spending billions of naira. Imagine there was a time they said they spent almost, that was during Emefiele. They spent, I'm trying to remember the figure, like, let's say like 40 billion to print 20 billion. People like, how possible it is. And that's why they don't print money easily. Ideally in Nigeria, money should have an expiration date. The dollar doesn't stay more than 5 years. And the reason for that is to prevent you from storing that money. Money printed 2017 should not be spent. When money printed 2016 should not be spent. Because you know if you keep it, because there was a time I took some dollar notes to go and exchange and I gave it to the aboki. The man said, this money have expired, I cannot collect it. That's beyond 5 years. I was like, so the money expire? He said, yes. So if we can have that policy in our naira, then that's the best way to deal with people who store their money.
All right, looking at this policy now, do you think it will be enough to withstand a future economic shock in Nigeria?
Yes, it will be because they must have calculated the inflation. They must have looked at the current trend and the survivor. The president just came back from UK. Part of, in quotes, the proposed economic gains is also taking some of our fintechs. If you just think of the first three fintechs, apart from the foreign one of them is among them going to cite his operation in the UK. And that would be a good one because it will be easy for you with your wallet, your mobile wallet, you can easily receive money abroad and transfer money over there. So with the present situation, it will be able. But it's just that the government lack the capacity of managing inflation. And what I mean by managing inflation, they only manage inflation by paper. And the way they do it by paper is to rebase. And rebase is a simple thing. You have 100 liters of water, and you want to pour it on 120-liter jerry can. That will be almost filled. The same 100 liters of water, pour it on 1,000-liter jerry can. It will be low. So that's just rebasement. Add more things to it, the figure will drop. Remove more things from it, the figure goes up. So it's a simple manipulation, a simple mathematics they use in confusing our heads and give us figure that inflation is dropping.
Now, from this that you've described, there are two questions in my head. First, will we be able to handle, with recapitalization, will we be able to handle forex exchange better? Will we be able to handle, you've mentioned inflation and how, it's been with us for a while, but for the FX, how do we handle this better with this?
Well, the FX still lies more with the central bank. And also it can still improve too because, let's take for instance, is production, is the number of goods you have on the international market. Those are things that affect our foreign exchange. If you look at when the Dangote refinery came on board, you could see what is happening to the naira. The naira is gaining appreciation because, let me explain how it works. When the demand for the naira is high, then the naira will appreciate. But when the demand is low, the naira will depreciate. When the demand for dollars is high, then the dollar will appreciate. When the demand drops, then it drops. So if you look at the major product we have on the international market is crude oil. We sell crude oil and import PMS. So that is why we've been finding it difficult in the exchange rate appreciating. But now that Dangote is not taking care of that area, so the importation of PMS have dropped. So the crisis in the foreign exchange have reduced. Now there's a particular indigenous airline that is trying. So instead of you buying your tickets in dollars, so your demand for dollar will reduce. So you now need Naira to buy your ticket with that particular airline that travels to some nations. It goes to UK, it goes to New York too, I think New York. So because of that, your demand for Naira will not be high. So these are things that will now boost the appreciation of the Naira. So if you now bring in more sectors into it, so with the bank capitalization, they'll be able to finance. In fact, this particular airline was able to accredit its success to a particular bank. That bank stood for him when he had nothing.
All right, as we went down on this segment this morning, we've seen compliance by major banks in Nigeria talking of this recapitalization policy. Should we be expecting more reforms from CBN after
In fact, the CBN have been doing a lot of reforms. Kudos to Cardoso. He has actually been working. And that is why I've been complaining that with the way Cardoso is working, if the Minister of Finance is working likewise, then we'll be having more gains. Because Cardoso controls the monetary policy. We also have the fiscal policy. That's the government angle. If the monetary and the fiscal policy, both of them are working, then the economy will be doing well. Because of recent, there are some regulation to deal with. So I think I'm trying to remember the policy to deal with some of these cyber fraud. It came up with, in fact, the wallet system was so porous then that anybody can just pick up and say, T1, this wallet account, and name it T1. But now you can't do that again. It's part of the reforms. You need your NIM, you need your BVN to open a wallet account. So there are a lot of reforms that the CBN is rolling out, and let them do more. And the banking sector and the financial sector will bounce back.
All right, let's look at the possibilities of major situations. We know that many of them are compliant, but there are possible major situations. Are there any risk, any concerns?
Major depends on what you are bringing to the table. I know there was a time, I was just trying to picture a lot of banks that came together. Some merge and retain their name. Some acquire some. Why? Some, okay, you bring this, I will bring the first part of your name, you bring the other part of your name, like a bank, PHB, then we add them together to form. So it all depends on your level of your equity contribution. So if this one is coming up for a national bank that is 200 billion, and a particular bank has 150 billion, you only need just 50 billion, and this other bank has 80 billion. So the coming together is not going to be equal because I have more. While another one may have more customer base. This one has the capital, you have the customer base. So how do we come together? The customer base knows my brand. And should I change identity, I may lose them. So can we retain the same identity, or can we do a little branding, a little adjustment, and still retain the customer base? So it all depends on the level of agreement for those coming together. So they may look at one or two things and decide on what to do.
All right. Now, we are trying to align with the $1 trillion economy. And these moves are part of moves engineered to allow us align. But do you think with the present economic situation globally, we can achieve that?
We should achieve that if the government is serious. The war between Iran, US, and Israel have given Nigeria a lot of gains. The government is silent because they know how much they are making. The budget, what do you call it, the barrel, I'm trying to remember what they call it, the benchmark for the oil price was at $64 per barrel. But because of this war, it rose to $130 per barrel. Look at the difference. How much they have made in the last 28 days. So they are making a lot of money. So if you look at it from that perspective, when it comes to gains, government will be quiet. But when it comes to pain, the masses should bear the pains. And that is why we'll be looking at a lot of reforms and whatever is going on. But I feel with the $1 trillion economy, is going to, and with what the CBN is doing, is going to benefit more of the private sector if they can. Because if you are familiar with the financial market, I was discussing with somebody and he was telling me that if you know somebody who needs like 5 billion naira, that they have the capacity to give out the loan. So I was like, wow. So you can give a loan of 5 billion. It wasn't there before because there's a reforms going on. In fact, there are some microfinance banks that gives entrepreneurs. In fact, there was one they said they give between 5 million to 200 million. Some give up to 300 million. And all you just need to do within 48 hours, meet up with the requirement, they do their credit assessment and do whatever they want to do because of this recapitalization. And when you have it in that manner, then the next thing the CBN needs to work on is the interest rate. Because if you can give that much and the interest rate is low, then these investors, the private sector, can be encouraged to access this loan. If you collect 20 million, you collect 50 million, you collect 100 million, and you know that at the end of 1 year, you are paying a very low interest rate, you'll be tempted to, okay, let me give it a try. I have the capacity to pay. Let me collect this money and expand my business. And by the time you expand your business, you are dealing with poverty. You are dealing with unemployment. So when you expand, you employ more people. And when you employ more people, you pay them. And when you pay them, they'll be able to pay their landlords. They'll be able to pay their children's school fees. They'll be able to feed. The market in turn will react. So that is how it moves. The bank has more money. The banks can do more transactions. The banks can take much more risks. And the business can actually approach them. So that's how it works.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bright Richard, the public affairs analyst. We've been talking about the CBN's banks recapitalization. Thank you so much for speaking about this and, of course, making us understand better. It's time for Sport All Day. We'll be right back. Please stay with us.